Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Secretly Greatly. This movie tells the story of North Korean young male top agents who have to undergo a mission in South Korea as spies. They infiltrate South Korea as a village idiot, a rock musician, and a high school student. They assimilate to small-town life while awaiting their orders, until one day, due to a sudden power shift in North Korea, their mission becomes a secret in great order. Will their secret mission succeed? Let's find out in Secretly Greatly. Secretly Greatly begins by showing a North Korean male top agent with the rank of lieutenant named Ryewon. Ryewon is a member of a group of spies called the 5446 Corps who has been trained to become a tough top agent from an early age. Ryewon gets a mission from his superior, Colonel Kim Tae-won, to become a spy in South Korea. Before carrying out his mission, the colonel said they would meet again, but with two possibilities: meet again as a brother or meet again as an enemy. 2 years later, Ryewon, who is now disguised as a village idiot named Bang Dong-gu, has adapted and gotten used to his life in South Korea. Disguising himself as an idiot, Dong-gu is often belittled and bullied by the boys around his neighborhood. However, Dong-gu doesn't mind it at all because it's a disguise. Dong-gu works as a grocery storekeeper belonging to an old woman named Mrs. Jeon to survive in South Korea. Not only working there, but he also lives in a small room above the grocery store. Even though the salary is small, Dong-gu is very happy to be working there because he can set aside a little of his income for savings, which he plans to give to his mother when he returns to North Korea. During his stay there, Dong-gu meets many people, one of whom is Yoo-run, an office worker who becomes his crush. However, whenever Dong-gu tries to greet and approach her, Yoo-run's younger brother, Yoo-jun, always scolds him. To perfect his disguise, Dong-gu always does things haphazardly and always pretends to be asleep while guarding the shop. In fact, he is just pretending and keeps a record of anyone who has shoplifted at the store, including the boys who bullied him a lot. Not long after, a beautiful woman named Run came to the shop and bought a box of cigarettes by way of debt. Dong-gu befriends a middle-aged man named Seo Sang-gu who works as a courier. Sang-gu turns out to be a top North Korean agent who has lived and carried out undercover missions in South Korea for 16 years. Dong-gu and Sang-gu are looking forward to orders from their superiors to return to North Korea because they both miss their respective families very much, especially Dong-gu who misses his mother very much. To convince those around him that he is an idiot, Dong-gu must perform a disguise code, to urinate in public every 2 months and defecate in public every 6 months. However, when doing his disguise this time, Dong-gu's action was caught by Yoo-run, who immediately felt ill-feel to see Dong-gu and always tried to avoid him whenever they passed on the street. Knowing that Dong-gu is always in awe of Yoo-run's beauty, Yoo-jun then gets annoyed because he thinks that Dong-gu wants to disturb his sister. Seeing Dong-gu, who was often bullied by Yoo-jun, Mrs. Jeon's son, Do-seok, feels sorry for him and teaches him a little martial arts so that he can take care of himself when someone beats him. Not long after, Sang-gu comes and tells Dong-gu the bad news that his mother has died. Dong-gu is shocked and devastated by the news, but he tries to be patient and hopes to return to North Korea soon so he can visit his mother's grave. Dong-gu then returns to his activities and does his job as usual. One day, when Dong-gu helps Do-seok deliver some sacks of rice and groceries to Run's boarding house, where he finds out that there is a new occupant of the boarding room, namely a blonde-haired youth who rarely leaves the room and get along with other residents of the boarding house. Dong-gu immediately feels suspicious and raises his guard because he assumes that the blonde-haired youth is a North Korean top agent who is also on the same mission as him. That night when Dong-gu was doing physical exercise, the blonde-haired youth came up to him and attacked him. They get into a pretty fierce fight before the young man finally reveals that he is Hee-rang, one of the top agents who are members of the 5446 Corps, just like him. Hee-rang also goes on the same mission as Dong-gu and disguises himself as Kim Min-soo, a singer wannabe, but he doesn't tell Dong-gu about his mission. After chatting for a while, Hee-rang leaves the Dong-gu residence. Out of curiosity, Dong-gu then secretly follows Hee-rang, who came to the venue for an audition to be a musician. Hee-rang turns out to be auditioning for the music, though in the end he fails because he is not good at playing a musical instrument. Dong-gu finally finds out about Hee-rang's mission and thinks that their superior will definitely send another agent from the 5446 Corps soon, for whatever purpose. However, Dong-gu immediately becomes annoyed that while carrying out his undercover mission in South Korea, he has never done a real mission at all and has only been an idiot for the past 2 years. Apparently, the 5446 Corps got opposition from several important officials and a professor in North Korea because it was considered too dangerous. So the secret agents who joined there did not get a clear mission since their recruitment. One day, Sang-gu comes to Dong-gu and asks for help. It turns out that Sang-gu intends to return to North Korea and intends to borrow one of Dong-gu's weapons. After lending him his gun, Dong-gu finds out that Sang-gu intends to defect from his country because the North Korean government had arrested his family when they were planning to flee to China. Hearing this, Dong-gu advises Sang-gu to end his own life because they must obey orders from their superiors and must not betray their homeland. When Sang-gu is about to kill himself by shooting himself, it turns out that the gun that Dong-gu gave him is an empty gun without bullets. Dong-gu then shoves Sang-gu against the wall, telling him to hold on and fight harder to return to their homeland and be reunited with their family. On the other hand, a male agent from the 5446 Corps is seen on a mission to kill an important South Korean official. After the male agent succeeded in carrying out his mission, relations between North and South Korea became heated and tensions occurred between the two countries. That night, while Dong-gu was writing a letter, suddenly a young man came to his residence and pointed a gun at him. The young man turned out to be an agent who had killed an important South Korean official this afternoon. He purposely came to see Dong-gu to remind him of his mission and to ask him not to forget his true identity. After that, the agent then fled from there. But because the young man was running so fast, Dong-gu had difficulty catching up with him, so he finally managed to escape. After losing track of the agent, Dong-gu then meets a drunk Run. While accompanying Run, he finds out that Run once gave birth to a child when she was 18 years old. However, because she was still too young, her parents sent her child to the United States for adoption. On his way home, Dong-gu again meets the agent who turns out to be his junior in the 5446 Corps named Hee-jin. Hee-jin then reveals that he got the same mission as Dong-gu and he rang and purposely came to see Dong-gu because he missed him, his senior and mentor, who helped him reach the top male agent position who was quite talented. After telling him this, Hee-jin leaves, leaving Dong-gu wondering why their superior sent two agents at the same time. Sometime later, Dong-gu meets Hee-jin disguised as a high school student and befriends Yoo-jun. Dong-gu then discovers that Sang-gu has disappeared and thinks that Hee-jin has killed him. However, Hee-jin denies the accusations and tells Dong-gu that he was assigned to replace Sang-gu but was not ordered to kill him. When Dong-gu and Hee-jin engage in conversation, they see Yoo-run being bullied by her boss who forces her to marry him. Dong-gu then asks Hee-jin to help Yoo-run, but Yoo-jun suddenly came and helped his sister. Dong-gu doesn't leave Yoo-run's boss alone because the man has threatened to fire Yoo-run. Dong-gu then threatens the man to do something embarrassing while filming it and tells him that he will share the video footage if he bothers Yoo-run again or intends to fire. The next day, Dong-gu sees Mrs. Jeon get into an argument with some thugs who force her to sell the liquor products they supply. However, Mrs. Jeon is reluctant to sell the product, so there is a debate between them. Dong-gu then helps Mrs. Jeon pretend to fall down the stairs and pushes the thugs away, saving Mrs. Jeon from the scattered shards of glass before injuring her head. Dong-gu is about to fight them, but Mrs. Jeon forbids it. That night, Dong-gu and Hee-jin visit the thugs' headquarters and intend to avenge Mrs. Jeon. But as it turns out, Do-seok was already there and was badly beaten by the thugs for trying to defend his mother. Dong-gu then asks Hee-jin to attack the thugs while he helps Do-seok. Hee-jin can easily defeat all the thugs with his ability as a top agent. Dong-gu then takes Do-seok away and helps him. Meanwhile elsewhere, the 5446 Corps founder, Mu-yuk, asks Tae-won to disband the special forces and orders his agents to return to North Korea. Mu-yuk plans to execute the agents once they return to North Korea and is considered a traitor to the country. However, Tae-won suggests ordering the agents to end their own lives so that the elite soldiers die honorably and be remembered as heroes. Tae-won then insists that he will personally execute the top agents who disobey the order and ensure that all traces of them disappear. After that, Dong-gu, Hee-rang and Hee-jin received orders to commit suicide from their superiors that were sent simultaneously. However, Dong-gu refuses to obey the order until the North Korean government guarantees the safety and well-being of his family. Knowing this, Hee-jin instead sees Dong-gu as a deserter for disobeying their superiors' orders and points a gun at him, intent on killing him. On the other hand, Hee-rang turns out to be siding with Dong-gu and attacks Hee-jin to help Dong-gu. Hee-jin rushed to run away from there because he was quite overwhelmed by Hee-rang, who was his senior. But then, Dong-gu chases after Hee-jin and tries to explain his intentions, not because he wants to go against orders, but because he wants to get reassurance for their family. Hee-jin finally understands Dong-gu's intentions against their superiors' orders. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the National Intelligence Service team leader, a man named Soo-yuk, finds tracking devices embedded in the bodies of North Korean agents who committed suicide in South Korea. Soo-yuk then orders his troops to find the North Korean agents who are still alive, which turns out to be only 3 people left, namely Dong-gu, Hee-rang and Hee-jin. Soo-yuk turns out to be trying to save the 3 young men so that they don't waste their lives by committing suicide. When he was about to go home, Hee-jin was followed by several members of the elite South Korean troops who Soo-yuk had ordered. Despite facing them alone, he can beat them all and quickly escape. Not long after, Soo-yuk managed to find Dong-gu's whereabouts and asked him to surrender and defect to South Korea while promising that he would get full protection from South Korea before their colonel came and executed them. However, Dong-gu refuses Soo-yuk's offer. Rejected, Soo-yuk ends up pointing a gun at Dong-gu, forcing him to surrender. Not long after, Hee-jin arrives, intending to help Dong-gu. Knowing that he can't face one of North Korea's top agents, Soo-yuk finally chooses to run away. Hee-jin then chases after him, but then, he is finally caught by Soo-yuk and his squad. Soo-yuk then slashes at Hee-jin's body, takes out the tracking device embedded in his body and shows it to him. Soo-yuk then says that the tracking device will tell the North Korean government the location of the top agents and inform whether the top agents are still alive or dead. After knowing this, Hee-jin finally discovers that the North Korean government has always been watching over him. Hee-jin is then taken to NIS headquarters for questioning. The next day, Dong-gu goes to a barbershop and changes his appearance. After that, he met Mrs. Jeon while expressing his desire to resign from his job and say goodbye to her with the excuse of wanting to meet his family in the village. Mrs. Jeon intends to give all her savings to Dong-gu out of pity, but Dong-gu refuses. Dong-gu bids farewell when he meets Yoo-run and says that Yoo-jun will always protect her. When Yoo-jun comes, Dong-gu then suggests he go to school while to graduate and attend college while taking care of his sister. Before leaving, Dong-gu then met Run and gave all of his savings to her so that she could meet her child in the United States while providing the address where her child lives in the United States. Everyone seems surprised by the big change in Dong-gu, from an idiotic young man to a wise and very serious person. As a top agent, Dong-gu is actually very genius, knows many foreign languages, and can read other people's personalities through their facial expressions. When he was about to leave, Dong-gu was attacked by Soo-yuk's henchmen, but he managed to paralyze them. Dong-gu then communicates with Soo-yuk and learns about the tracking device. Dong-gu then asks Soo-yuk to protect Hee-jin and keep him alive. On the other hand, Soo-yuk gets information that Tae-won has arrived in South Korea and intends to execute Hee-rang and Dong-gu. Therefore, he ordered his troops to prepare and protect Hee-rang and Dong-gu. Knowing Tae-won is coming to execute them, Hee-jin then begs Soo-yuk to join his army to help Dong-gu and Hee-rang. Dong-gu and Tae-won finally meet in an empty building, where Tae-won thinks Dong-gu has betrayed by disobeying his orders. However, Dong-gu insists on staying alive before ensuring that the North Korean government will ensure the safety and well-being of his family, which Tae-won refuses because Dong-gu has no right to make any deals. Dong-gu then gets into a fight with one of Tae-won's henchmen, but he easily overpowers him. When Dong-gu is about to kill Tae-won, he gets back up and manages to injure Dong-gu. They get into another fight until Dong-gu falls from the window of a building upstairs and meets two boys who bullied him a lot when he was still pretending to be an idiot. Dong-gu rushes to save the two boys with the help of Hee-rang. After that, he and Hee-rang rush to meet Sang-gu in an abandoned building. However, how shocked they are to find out that Sang-gu is one of the people who oppose the formation of the 5446 Corps and intends to eliminate all remaining elite North Korean troops. Dong-gu and Hee-rang immediately get into a fierce fight with Sang-gu and his henchmen. On the other hand, Tae-won and his henchmen finally get there and rush in to finish off Dong-gu and Hee-rang, while Soo-yuk and his squad have to face off against Sang-gu and Tae-won's henchmen who shoot them from inside the building. Hee-jin then helps by defeating one of Tae-won's snipers and succeeds in overthrowing the other henchman so that Soo-yuk and his troops can safely enter the building. Meanwhile, Hee-rang tries to save the injured Dong-gu by climbing to the top of the building, followed by Tae-won and his henchmen and Soo-yuk and his squad. Tae-won then detonates a grenade to hinder Soo-yuk and his squad. On the rooftop, Hee-rang and Dong-gu again engage in a fight with Tae-won's henchmen. After that, Dong-gu and Tae-won were involved in a fierce duel because both of them were the most powerful top agents. However, Dong-gu finally fell and had to admit the greatness of his superior. At the same time, Soo-yuk and his elite squad arrive at the rooftop, where one of them is Hee-jin in disguise. Hee-jin then switched positions and now sided with Tae-won. Knowing that all the top agents from the 5446 Corps are complete, Tae-won then takes out a grenade, intending to blow himself up with them all so that they die with honor. However, Hee-rang quickly pushed Tae-won's body away and the two of them fell from the roof of the building, along with the exploding grenade. Dong-gu accidentally finds the passbook that Mrs. Jeon puts into his pocket, instantly feeling sad and crying in frustration, remembering all the kindness of Mrs. Jeon and Do-seok who always care for him and treat him like family. Dong-gu shouted as he expressed his desire to return to Mrs. Jeon's residence and regroup with them, but an angry Hee-jin then hits Dong-gu and tries to make him realize their true identity. Soo-yuk then tries to convince Hee-jin and Dong-gu to give up so they can go back to their own lives and live forever in South Korea. However, Hee-jin prefers death to live as a defector, so Soo-yuk and his troops are forced to execute him. Seeing this, Dong-gu gets up and rushes to protect Hee-jin by hugging him, at which point they both fall off the roof like Hee-rang and their colonel. At the end of his life, Dong-gu recalls the moments he shared with Hee-rang and Hee-jin when they were still on an undercover mission at Mrs. Jeon's residence, to which he then closes his eyes with a happy smile. Through this film, we are shown the struggles and sacrifices of young people who love their homeland and always try to do the best for their country, but in the end they are betrayed by their own government and considered as traitors to the country. In fact, the troops who fight directly on the battlefield to defend the country are far more honorable than the officials who only want to do politics and are selfish. In this film, we are shown that the kindness, care and sincerity that we have can more or less change the people around them, like Mrs. Jeon and Do-seok against Dong-gu.